Welcome everyone to the first How to Network event from Wish. So Wish has been going a while, and Kemi and I are on the London board, and we are kind of education and young Wish. And it seemed like this was an event that needed to happen to introduce everyone to networking, and it is quite a daunting subject for a lot of people. I think my first networking is probably with Wish, and I went into this room and there's such a friendly bunch of women, and I was very lucky that a woman called Eleanor Ball, who bounded over to me and with a massive smile introduced herself, and I felt just at home. So having that way to initiate a conversation is so important, and you're going to hear from our amazing speakers about their lived experiences and their coaching and how they recommend kind of starting this trip. And it's something you'll have to do throughout your career. I was telling Tracy before the call started, I was actually at a conference today with networking, and it's the first time since COVID, and it was so daunting entering that room. And my first reaction was to huddle off in a corner on my own and just sip my cup of tea. And I think that's natural and it's nothing to be afraid of. So today, this event is in aid of the Girls Network, and they really support young women to get to any future they really want. It's not always about going into further education, it's about the small gains that they can make in lives, and they work with mentors across the country. And if there's anyone you know who'd be interested in a mentor, I know they'd be grateful to have some. They're inundated in London, but across other regions they're really struggling, so it's always worthwhile. And today is a free event, but we set up a Just Giving page, which I will send the link to, and I really encourage you all to donate, because what they're doing is very worthwhile, and it does change lives. So without further ado, I will introduce our speakers. And first up today is Tracy. She is the chair of our London region and a coach in leadership. She is going to talk to you kind of about networking, and between her and Kathryn, we're going to cover why it's important, how you can approach it, and the mental mindset to take with you, which I can't highlight enough, and I'm sure Tracy and Kathryn will convince you if I can't, that it is essential having that mindset from the outset. So and the second speaker is Kathryn Krauss. I came across her through Reinvent, is it? I can't, yeah, Reinvent. And I actually came across this fantastic video that Kathryn had put together about women coming back to work, and I was so inspired by it. I reached out to her and asked her if she'd speak about how you network and the importance of creating a network and how to plan a network, and she'll cover all of that today. And our final speaker will be Dimple Shah, who is a young aspiring architect at PRP, and she is going to talk about her lived experience as a young person in the profession, and how her understanding of what networking is has developed, and some of the good and the bad I think she will briefly touch on, but we'll try and focus on the good and keep it positive. So the way today's going to work is Tracy's going to do a short speech, and then followed by Kathryn. We're going to do some breakout rooms. Do not be scared. Everyone's really friendly, and we will all be there to ask and answer questions and discuss how everyone feels about networking. And Tracy and Kathryn will post some questions. It's going to be interesting and nothing to be intimidated by. And then Dimple's going to talk about her experience. Then Alex, an architect from PRP, is going to come in with some questions and answers, and our lovely Kemi is going to summarize the day and hopefully take away, give you some lessons learned to take away. So without further ado, I'll hand over to Tracy, who's going to be our first speaker of the day.
Thank you, Kathryn. So I don't know if it's going to help. You could either switch your videos off if you'd like to have the speakers in for your full view, or just choose speaker view, whatever you'd like to do to listen, however you're going to listen best, and what's the best way for you to take your learning away from this session. So networking, it's interesting what Kathryn said about that nerves going into the room as we go into the room, that and what I hear in that is we have a judge, probably all of us in our head, that thinks that are judging yourself or judging the situation that you're in. So you're already potentially working on your mindset that are making it not very good for the situation you're walking into, because of the fear that you have of being judged, or you're judging yourself already before you enter that room. But networking, professional networking, is about relationship building. People do buy people, but that doesn't mean to say that when you're networking, you're selling. You're not. Networking isn't about selling, it's about being. It's about being yourself and taking your whole self into the room. I do a presentation workshop, a course in presenting, and I often ask people, one of the questions is, who's the expert, who's the person walking onto the stage, and list all the things that are about you walking onto the stage. And what I get back from people is, I'm an expert in rent arrears, financial controller, I'm a team leader. So they come out with this very narrow list of who they are professionally, just their badge, what their job title is, and the things that are associated with that job title. You are so much more than that. And when you go and you're networking or you're speaking or anything, you take your whole self into that situation. So when I network, I'm a consultant, I'm the chair of Wish, I'm those things, but I'm also a mum, I'm also a sister and a daughter, I'm also a drummer and an artist. So I'm all of those things, and I take all of me into the room. And people, you will warm to others, and people will warm to you if you take your whole self and you're not nervous around just what your job title is, and you're there just to talk about your job. You take your whole self into the room. So think about that later when you go into your session. I don't go into a room and say to people, oh, I'm a drummer as well. I very much have my professional hat, but I know I'm taking all of me. It's my awareness around who I am that's important. So think about who you are, your whole self, and take that whole self into any networking event. And then we're connecting not job title to job title, but human to human. And that's what it's about, really building the relationships. So I'll give you some of my stories of networking. I network a lot. I'm a consultant. Before I was a consultant, I was a salesperson, a marketing person. So I've networked a lot throughout my career. But I transitioned in my career. I went from working in cabarets as a salesperson, and I went and studied art, and then I finished that, and I had no network at all, professional network, when I came back when I was around 50. So I had no network, but I went to study coaching at Henley. And one of my cohort was the director of new development for the Guinness Trust. He had a brilliant network. So I said to him, the next time you go to a conference, take me with you, take me around the conference for 2 hours and introduce me to everyone you know. And I'd actually coached him to help him at Henley. So I said, you know what I'm like as a coach, introduce me as how you feel I am as a coach. So I leveraged what I had in my network to connect to another network. Because when he talked about housing to me, I thought that's a sector that's commercially sound. It's got commercial leaning to it, but it's also doing social good. And I really wanted to be in this environment. So yes, he took me to Brighton. He introduced me to people, and that was in 2015. And that's where I secured my first client in housing, from that conference, from that introduction. And of course, it didn't happen at the conference. I came away from the conference ready to have a meaningful conversation with somebody else that had bought me as a person, that saw me as a person and thought that's somebody I can work with. So it's understanding who's in your network and how you can leverage that. Another example, in 2018, I was at a networking event, and actually one of the speakers was so inspirational, and I completely connected with her. And so I waited till she'd finished speaking, and I went over and spoke to her and said, I really love what you talked about. We're in the same sort of space. And I talked to her about my love of what she was talking about. And I said, would you like to have a coffee with me at some stage? So that was in 2018. She's now a business partner. I work with her. She's one of the best networkers I know. She's got 40,000 followers on LinkedIn. She's a definite introvert, but that was me taking the initiative because I saw something in someone else that resonated. We weren't doing the same job, but there was something on a personal level I resonated with her. So I took the chance and spoke to her. So that's another thing you can do at networking. And body language, observing how people are is important at networking event. And I remember, so sometimes where things, were different, challenging. I remember getting up for an event. I got up at 6 o'clock in the morning, drove, it was like an hour's drive to a networking event. And I'm in the car and I'm thinking, why am I doing this? Why am I doing this to myself? I'm going to a place, I don't know anyone. I've got myself up at 6 o'clock, and it was over and over this negative chatter in my head about what's going to happen. I actually thought, I'm going to go there, no one's going to want to speak to me, no one's going to like me. So I had all this going on in my head. And then I suddenly woke up to myself and thought, what are you doing? You've chosen to get in this car. There might be someone really nice there. Just go and think, ask questions, see who's there. I've never been there before. Find out who's interesting. So I just talked to myself and thought, no, I'm going to have an adventure. I'm going to have some fun. I'm going to ask people questions, and I'm just going to get curious. So I'm going to go to this event, just get curious. So I actually went and I met all these people, grabbed myself a coffee. The thing to do, I'm just going to show you some body language. When you go into a networking thing, if you've got people that are like face to face like this, and they're very intense talking to each other, it's very difficult to get into that conversation. So you're going to be sort of hovering here. If there's somebody here and they've got an angle, and that person there's an angle, there is a place for you to step into. So just look around the room and see where there's space for you to step in. You'll notice just what conversations are going on. And that's what I did. I didn't know anybody. I just looked around the room. I look for people on their own as well, and quite often I'll play the mind game with myself. I'm going to make them feel welcome, even though I'm the newbie. So, but look at the space, look at where people are standing, and move into groups if there's if there's a space for you to move into, and just stay there with your drink. Make sure you've got something in your hand, and just stay there and smile, and eventually they will connect with you and they will start speaking to you. So I did that, and I asked loads of questions. I did exactly what I thought I was going to do. I asked questions, got interested about everybody. And this event, what you had to do was, after you spoke to everyone, you sat down and had breakfast. And then through breakfast, everybody in the room had to stand up for 1 minute and say why they were there. And at the end of that minute, everyone had a scorecard with 4 appointments on. So you had to write down who else in the room you'd like to talk to. And bearing in mind, I thought nobody would want to speak to me. I did my minute. I'd listened to everyone. People were feeling quite afraid, and there was a lot of talk about needing resilience. So I did my minute on I work with people in building resilience. And guess what? I had one of the biggest sort of cues wanting to see me, but that's because I'd bothered to listen. So you can go to networking events just with that curious mindset. Who am I going to meet? So it doesn't all have to be on you. So I think that's the thing for me around networking, is really take your whole self. Everybody feels the same as you. You're going to go into breakout rooms and you'll see other people that all feel like you. As human beings, we have psychologically, we are wired to be fearful. If we go into an environment where we're unsure, then we tend to be fearful. But you're there to build relationships, just to get to know people. You don't have to go in, you don't have to sell yourself. You just have to be yourself. And the more fun you can have with it, the better you will be at networking. You'll get so much more from it than you can ever think possible. I have made brilliant relationships. I've got the most incredible network of people that are so interested. They don't all bring me work, but what they do is let me see myself better. I know what my offer is better. I'm just curious. I'm just interested in people. So that fuels my curiosity, but it also expands my thinking and my knowledge. So I learned so much from networking. So I am going to wrap up there. That's my sort of gift to you, is that networking is a gift. It will bring you more than you can ever think possible if you can just be yourself and take your whole self into that networking situation. So on that note, I'm going to hand over to Kathryn.
Ooh, that was a very quick handover. Thank you, though. Thank you so much. Tracy, so great to hear your inspirational words. Can everyone hear me? I think so. I'm blinking green. So hi, everyone. My name is Kathryn Krauss. I am a professional career coach for women of all levels. I am American, but I'm based in Germany. So hence the international part of the conference, or sorry, the meeting today. Yeah, I would like to talk about networking as well. And my focus will be on the practical side of things. So Tracy talked about that, you know, networking is about building relationships. And I think we can all understand that. You know, networking is about finding as well common interests with people. It's a kind of a two-way collaboration about sharing information. So I think that part is clear, but I think what's daunting for a lot of people is, how do you actually do it? So what kind of questions do you ask? How do you integrate kind of the in-person networking with online, LinkedIn? I mean, social media plays a huge part in our lives nowadays, and also in our careers. So this is something that I can also give my 2 cents on. So a little bit about my background. I have been a professional coach now for quite a few years. I started the women's network at Adidas globally. And so I basically started my network because I felt like there was a need for women to connect inside our own company. And so that's why I started the network. I'm also a coaching for the women's returners. It's a group based in London for women returning to work. That's also a wonderful network. So I've started networks, I've joined various networks, and yeah, so it's an important part of your career. What I can assure you is people in general, the psychology of network is that people are happy to network with you. So as Tracy mentioned, the psychology part of networking, you might feel inside afraid or intimidated by networking, but on the other side, people are in general very open to helping. They love to give advice. They love to also talk about themselves. If you've ever noticed at parties, you know, you get asked a few questions to certain people and they can't stop talking. Also, they enjoy to have their work valued and recognition. And there are also people curious about you and your experience, and not just from your professional side, but also you as a person. So that's also what Tracy mentioned. It's about your whole person. And the question is, why should we network? It's important for us to network because this is where we really find new opportunities. So if we do not kind of expand our network, if we kind of stay within our certain circles of friends and colleagues, we will not get opportunities, for example, new job opportunities, or new, identifying new trends, or kind of showing our influence also at work. So these are some reasons why we should network. Also, it's interesting to meet new people and to share some maybe common experiences. So that's why you're here in the Wish network, is also you share something together. So so those are the reasons why you should network. And now comes to the big question: how does that work? How should we do that? Well, the first part of it is the mindset. The mindset is to be curious. So what does that actually mean, to be curious? It means to take a genuine interest in what other people are about. So when you are starting out with networking, it's about trying to understand what the other person might be interested in you. So you've heard of this term, go-getter. Have you heard this term? So a go-getter, it's maybe more of an American term, I don't know, but it's kind of someone who's really ambitious and not afraid to approve, or pursue what she wants. And what I would like to propose is, when you're networking, don't be a go-getter, be a go-giver. So try to understand not only what people can give to you, but what also you can give to your network. So to start off with, you can think about these questions. Start with finding facts that others might find interesting about you. And this is a little self-reflection exercise. We can do it right now, maybe just a minute or two. Think really about, what are some of my unique experiences that I've had that people might be interested in? So this could mean places you've worked in, so different companies you've worked in, also different locations you've worked in. Perhaps you've worked in an international environment. So I moved almost 20 years ago to Germany, and I speak fluent German now. I've also lived in Montreal, Canada. So I speak some French as well. So this is something that's kind of unique about me. I worked for a sports company. I also worked for a medical company. And so these are kind of unique facts about me. So that's kind of what you could also talk about, or think about, where have I studied? So where are my studies? Also some unique hobbies you have. Maybe you are really passionate about some pastime that someone could find fascinating. And another point to think about is, who are your connections? So maybe not just your close family and friends, but who are connections? Maybe it's your neighbors or people that you do these hobbies with. So who in your, let's say, more broader network do you know that you could maybe include, as that could also be something interesting about you? So maybe just take a minute just to jot down some things that are really unique about you. So what is the value that you are bringing to your network? So if you have a pen and paper, just take a few minutes to jot that down. Would anyone like to share some examples in the chat? Passion for design. Great, Alex. Thank you. Oh, wow. Louise built her own house. That's amazing. Yeah, and these are fantastic, because maybe on a first glance, I studied in the Netherlands. Rebecca says worked both in public and private sector. Great. Yeah, these are all things that are unique to you. And you can expand this list as well. And of course, it depends, keeping with the generally being curious, you can figure out what would interest the other person and then kind of offer that value to them once you figure out what the other person is interested in. This is great. I love the sharing. Thank you. Okay, so that's the first thing. So number one, know your unique value. So number two, this is more kind of the logistics part of networking. So first of all, when you are in a bigger group, a large networking event, like what Tracy was talking about, and they should start to happen more and more, actually in live, which is really exciting. What I like to do before one of those big events is to really figure out kind of who's going to be there, and if there are people that I already know will be there that I want to talk to. So if I go to a conference or even some kind of training that my work offers, I always try to figure out, are there any participants or speakers that I definitely want to connect with? So I do a little bit of homework ahead of time. So I identify people based on my goals, right? So let's say that, I would like to find, well, I do a lot of work with agile teams. So let's say I want to find someone that's really an expert in agile, then I will kind of look ahead of time and see, are there any big names from agile coaches, and I'll kind of go to them and I'll speak to them, and I'll have a goal in mind, right? So maybe it's just, getting them in my network, or connecting to see, what are their latest ideas, what are the trends, could I invite them to my company as well? So I have a definite goal and I do homework ahead of time. Secondly, I focus on the quality of my relationships at those large events and not the quantity. So at those events, it's not how many cards you come back with in your hand, how many business cards, or how many, well, nowadays, any LinkedIn connections you get at the end. It's really about a genuine connection with that person. Do you feel like this person would be a genuine addition, a good addition to your network? And then I would pursue that relationship. You don't have to connect with everyone. Also, a tip for LinkedIn, you do not have to accept every invitation that someone sends you. I always check to see if I know that person or if someone is connecting me from, and usually I don't accept anyone who has not written a little note to explain the background. So just keep that in mind. And of course, in a large group, you could even prepare some questions ahead of time. If you have some really interesting people, if you have some questions prepared ahead of time, that's great. So my advice is just to do a little bit of homework before you go to those large group settings. Then once you get into like a one-on-one situation, make sure you have a solid introduction. So Tracy was saying as well, yes, you can say your title, but have a little bit more about that. So if you're in a professional setting, talk about, your title. Yes, you can say that, no problem. You can also say your company. You can also say how many years of experience you have. You can talk a little bit about maybe a special area of business that you are specializing in. And then maybe kind of a fun fact as well of how you help the company, maybe some supporting evidence of how you're adding, your contribution to the company. But it shouldn't be too long, but just have that down and practice that a little bit, kind of like an elevator pitch. So depending on who you're meeting, tailor your introduction. It can be 1 or 2 sentences to introduce yourself, but just have a solid introduction. Also, try to create informal talks. So let's say you go to this large gathering, and maybe you could also try to take that person aside, or have just a coffee chat with that person. So try to create informal kind of one-on-one settings, because this is much more lucrative than kind of being in a huge group. Okay. Good. And questions to ask others. So I like to have a list of questions that I, typically, try to ask new people that I don't really know. If I'm in a professional setting and I'm talking to, let's say, a peer or someone I'm excited about getting to know, sometimes I'll ask them about their motivation for why they got into their profession or their job position, because I find it's really interesting and inspiring as well how people ended up in those roles, especially if it's a role that you're aspiring to. I find it's really kind of interesting to figure out, how did these people get into their roles? So this is a great question, and people like to be asked, I think, in general, how they kind of had their career path. I think that's a good question to ask. Also, a great question is, hey, to talk about, do you know any interesting professional articles or books you could recommend? In general, people like to talk about, knowledge sharing. So that's kind of a general one that you could throw out there. If you're kind of more in a, let's say, philosophical mood, you could ask them, is there anyone you admire in this industry or profession, or someone else? Is there someone you admire? This really gives you insights into their character and their values as well. I find that's a really interesting question. And also, once you've kind of established your relationship a little bit, I find the question, how could I help you? Or, how could I assist you with something? Or could I follow up on anything for you? I find that that's a nice invitation for an extended relationship for afterwards. I find that's really, really a good question. But just make sure that you live up to your promise. And with that also said, so last but not least, I believe that follow-up is probably as important as actually meeting someone in a networking setting, because the follow-up is really how you build the relationship. So we talked about building relationships. So follow-up with an email, or maybe setting up an informal meeting is something that is really important. And also, if they send you something, information, or arrange something or connect you, please say thank you. And a personal thank you is really important as well. Good. So I see Tracy went on her camera. I'm hoping I didn't go over my time.
No, all good. All good.
Okay.
Brilliant advice.
So, yeah. So any questions?
Before we put you into breakouts to play at network. Isn't it funny?
We have a list.
I just think all that came to my head now is like, if any of you got children, when you take them to something for the first time, and quite often they'll just hold back, and then, but in no time at all, they're stuck in and getting involved, and it's just that bit in your head that goes, okay, I'm just going to be interested in these people, and all the things that Kathryn said, I think. And I think the other thing about the elevator pitch, Kathryn, there is something about knowing why you're there, and saying that you are there to meet like-minded people that are interested in this topic in the housing sector, or whatever it is. What really floats your boat?
We also had a question in the chat. Cyan, I believe, wrote that Cyan, how do you manage those nerves when you meet someone for the first time? That's interesting. I mean, if it's someone you really admire, of course there will be nerves. I find it's helpful to hold on to something. So if you have a cup or a mug, breathing, of course. So I always tell my coaching clients, your breath is like, that's your instant, calmer. There's nothing that can calm you down more than taking a few deep breaths. So if you can practice that, you're already good to go. I don't know. What about you, Tracy? What do you do?
So there's a couple of techniques you can do, and this is from Positive Intelligence. You can just pay attention to your toes. So right now, just feel all of your toes.
Oh, that's good.
So if you're standing there, you just start thinking about your toes and connect with your toes, because what you're doing is bringing yourself into your body. So it's
like
the same thing as the breath, but you're really focusing on your toes. So it takes that out of your head. The other thing you can do is just rub 2 fingers together and feel every ridge on your finger. So if you've got your hand down, you've got a cup in your hand, you could just do that with your finger. Again, it just brings you into your body and gets you out of your head. And that's just 30 seconds.
Yeah. And I tend to just smile incessantly. And I find that smiling kind of breaks barriers no matter what.
Yeah.
So this also helps.
I
just smile, a nice smile.
I think that's so, because what did there's this thing, isn't there? If you smile, then your brain will catch up with your body.
That's right. There's the pencil trick. You're supposed to hold a pencil in your mouth, and that sends like the connections to your brain that it's happy. So even if you're not actually smiling, it thinks you're smiling, your brain.
Yeah. And
anyway, it's a science experiment. You can read about it.
It definitely works. But I guess the thing is Sean, is the fear, is thinking about the fear. The fear is your judge is making comments in your head about how this person's going to view you. You're pushing all your thoughts out and think you can second guess what the person in front of you is going to do or think. You have no clue where they are. They may be as nervous as you, and just you smiling and being interested in them just relaxes you both. So don't, be aware of that judge in your head that's making, I can't possibly know what you're all thinking now. And if I let my brain take this, those thoughts start steering me, then I'm going in completely the wrong direction. I can't possibly know. So I can only just know it's myself. The other thing I do, just one other thing. I go to my heart and I open it up like a flower. I'm just going to put some love in the room. And that's a really nice way of, and everyone will feel it. Everyone will feel it if you genuinely go, I'm going to put some love in the room. So there'll be my tips. So you've got some good tips.
So feel your toes and get some love in the room. I love that, Tracy. I'm going to take that.
Okay. So we're going to go into breakout rooms now. We're going to put you into breakout rooms for we've got 3 and 4s in breakout rooms. So you're just going to have 10 minutes together. And maybe just introduce yourselves. And just take the time to introduce yourself to each other and share one interesting fact about yourself, maybe. The other thing to share is why you're here. What's just the essence of why you're here? So in a few short words. So just share that with each other. Okay, so 10 minutes, you're into rooms. Just make sure all your cameras are back on, please, before. So if you could all switch your cameras on, because otherwise you'll go into those breakout rooms and you won't see each other. We're looking at blank screens. So I'm going to open all rooms. If you can just accept. I've just noticed I've had people drop off, but anyway. So all the speakers, you can just stay in the main room and don't accept your invite, all the speakers.
Graduating in 2015, so yeah, about 5 years. Since then, I've completed my Part 2 education, and I'm sort of on track to completing my Part 3. So I guess within those 5 years, I found that they're really important because I've sort of learned a lot pretty quickly during that time. I've learned a lot about myself and all the things that I'm great at and also not so great at. And there's a couple of things that dominate what I struggle with, and one of them is presenting. so far so good. But the other thing which you might have preempted a guess to is networking too. So I'm sort of here to give my experience of networking. So it's sort of more of a really personal approach, and what I have done to gain skills in networking, etc. But it's probably good to start off with what I learnt within those 5 years. It doesn't necessarily mean I'm a pro, and you'll understand that by the end of the talk. But it has meant that I've picked up some strategies or techniques or skills that's helped me get better. At the time, I didn't really have an event like this to help me. So I wish I had you guys here to sort of tutor me into networking, but I didn't have that. So I sort of had to do it by myself, which you'll see in a bit. So to start off with, it's probably worth me mentioning how much I avoided networking sessions. It was pretty fearful for me, especially having to speak to people that I didn't know. And I'm usually a really bubbly character. If you see me walking down the streets or in Tesco's or whatever, you know, I'm easy to talk to, I think, anyway. So it was actually the fear of, or the feeling that I didn't know enough to speak to some of these professionals in the room. So, I mean, if I'm being honest, I got an overwhelming sense of imposter syndrome that was sort of rain on my parade, which wasn't really great, but I wanted to work on it. So there was a turning point for me during my 5 years of working in industry, where I decided to hone down on this sort of, I guess, weakness I have in networking. So I wanted to work on it, and that started off this sort of turning point. Started off at a networking event that I went to, where I went to with a couple of people from work at a practice at the time, where a director wanted to leave her bags with us because she overheard a group of people mentioning that they're developers, essentially clients for the practice. And it sort of hit me then that networking is such a key skill, and probably one of the best marketing techniques for your business, small or large. And it's, you know, it's one of the ways that you can get clients in by winning their trust and, you know, showing who you are, your friendly personality, and that you're trustworthy, etc. But it's not just constrained to the architectural industry. You know, it applies to every professional business out there. And it's a great skill to have because of those reasons. So it was that sort of realization or epiphany, or whatever you wish to call it, when I decided to work on this. And I sort of decided to use that skill to benefit myself in the future, not so much now, because I felt like I really wanted to show myself for who I am, not necessarily me as a professional. You know, there's more to me as an individual. So what I started off doing to work on this, I booked my first event, and I decided that I'd go by myself to just be me. And the event was essentially a talk with an architect, and after the talk, there would be drinks and snacks and things like that to entice you into the networking hall. So once the talk was over and the doors to the networking hall essentially opened, I literally walked straight the other way. I walked right out the exit. I couldn't do it. And I felt happy that I took the step to go to an event by myself. I mean, this was probably my early years of working industry, but I was happy that I took that step to go to that event. But I also felt a little bit gutted that I didn't go out to do what I wanted to do, which was networking with, you know, people that I didn't quite know. So there was sort of through a chain of events that I probably went to, there was an event that I was invited to. As soon as I was invited, I said yes straight away to it. I sort of thought if I think about it too much, I might say no. So I said yes straight away to it. And it's probably not so healthy to admit this, but I thought if I have a couple of drinks beforehand or during, that might boost my confidence a little. And to be honest with you, it worked a treat. It worked really well. I was talking to loads of people. The event went really well. I was super happy. But again, I went away feeling happy, but also like I cheated a little bit. I felt like I was relying on something that's not sustainable. For example, if I ever become pregnant, I won't be able to drink. If I ever have health issues, the doctor will say no, I can't drink. If my religious beliefs change for whatever reason, again, I won't be drinking. And also if I wanted to do dry January or something, it's not a sustainable method. So I really wanted to go away and retry that, I guess. So the next session of events, I spoke to a friend of mine who was exactly on the same page as me. We wanted to learn how to network, and we also understood the importance of it. So as soon as I was invited to the event, I straight away said yes. And we decided that this time we wouldn't rely on each other. We wouldn't go into the event as a pair and network with other people together. We decided we'd part ways, and if we ever needed to fall back on each other as a last resort, we would do. But the idea was go straight in, the first people that you see, go and say hi, be sort of warm and welcoming, and see where it takes us. Set the mood where you are acting confident, I guess. That worked really, really well. I thought I absolutely nailed it. To be honest, the people there, it was an architecture event, if I remember correctly. And, we spoke about anything and everything, to be honest, not just architecture. And it was great to connect with loads of people there. Everyone was really friendly. And there are still some people that I talk to now. And I think that might have been, I don't know, 3 years ago. So that was a really great event. And I went away feeling super happy. The next time that I signed up to an event, I decided that I'd go by myself. I thought I've got it in the bag. I've pretty much nailed the last networking event. So I wanted to do this confidently again by myself. But this time the environment was pretty loud. It was in a hall. Loads of drinks. It was great. It was super fun. It wasn't an issue at all. But I mean, I guess not, but the general audience in that room, there were predominantly men, so about probably 90% men in that room, which is totally fine. I don't think that ever made me feel like I need to step away or anything. It is a little intimidating, but I mean, it was totally fine. But there was one thing that I hadn't quite predicted, that sort of took me by surprise, was that I'm 5'1", and a lot of the guys there are about a foot taller than me. So I'm pretty sure, and a lot of people there were really tall. So the conversations were literally happening above my head. So it's really hard to make eye contact and hear people speak. And, you're trying to shout above other people that are speaking in the room. So it was a little difficult, but I mean, I didn't go away feeling disheartened. I didn't even go away feeling like I needed to wear heels as well, because again, it's not sustainable. If I ever have a long-term injury in my ankle or knee or something like that, it's not sustainable. I didn't want to rely on that. So I mean, I don't really have an answer onto how to overcome that bit, but I guess the point that I'm trying to make there is that even the most confident person in the room won't they won't be a pro at networking. There's always something that might make you feel a little uncomfortable, but it's just how you deal with it and how you go about it. And actually Tracy and Kathryn's points that they raised, I think I could use some of those, to be honest, and go to the next event feeling even more confident and doing it even better. So I just like to conclude with 3 final points. that I feel has helped me. So number one, never feel like you need to change who you are physically. A lot of the times that will be unsustainable. And if it makes you feel uncomfortable, don't do it. You know, you need to be yourself. You need to be comfortable. Number two, as soon as you walk into a room, as Kathryn was talking about, and Tracy, go in with open arms, feel confident, and introduce yourself to the first person that you see, sort of thing. Because as soon as you start standing in the corner, sort of trying to see who's the best people to talk to, that might make you feel a little bit fearful. And finally, number three, never say no to something that frightens you. So if the opportunity comes to go to a networking event, just say yes. Just think about it later, just say yes straight away, because as soon as you say no, you really solidify that fear in your mind, and it grows like the snowball effect until you genuinely feel that you're not capable. So say yes straight away. And that's it from me. I'll leave it there, and thank you everyone for listening. Tracy, can't hear you.
Off mute. That's a good one. Well done. Thank you for that. I think that's lovely, sharing your experiences, because then we all know we are human and have the same feelings. So, but even with those feelings, you can still push through and build your network, which is vital. So, Alexandra, I'm going to hand over to you now.
Thank you, Tracy. So we thought it would be really good if basically before we wrap up, we take a few questions from the audience. And I think there are a few that came through already, which is really exciting. And one that I would like to take forward as a first question, which I think is really interesting, is basically, if you are the newest, youngest person in the room, how do you kind of prepare yourself, and how do you feel that you will bring value to the network? And I'll give a very short answer from my side before passing on to Kathryn and Tracy. At least from my perspective, being young, at least in architecture, is so valuable because you have such a fresh view on life. You just came out of university where you've been looking at all the latest research. Academia can bring so much value to the network that you're bringing towards, and generally in professions, you tend to get used to what you know. So I think being new, straight out of school, is so valuable to networks. But that's at least my perspective, and I'll pass over to Tracy and Kathryn.
And Kathryn, I know, has already taken the initiative and answered that question. So.
I did. Yeah, I just wanted to remind people that everyone's been new in the career before, or in my case, and maybe yours as well, Tracy, I've reinvented myself several times in my career so far. I started off also in marketing and moved into IT and done some coaching as well. And it's kind of hard to pin down kind of where I haven't been really. And that's okay. I mean, I think what's important is you bring your passion and your interests to the conversation and talk about what you're excited about. I mean, I don't know how you feel, but when people are really excited about something, I get excited too. And I want to listen. And, you know, it's like when I start to talk about coaching, I get, you know, my eyes light up and I can talk for hours about it, whoever can listen. So I think that applies for anything. What do you think, Tracy?
100% agree. So one thing I would say is, don't assume that somebody of my age is the expert in the room, because I could be new. And so you're carrying that assumption. Two, I so value a different opinion. And and that's the thing of having a rich network. So don't let your inner judge stop you from making connections that other people might want.
Yeah, that's a really good point. That fresh perspective. I love to have younger members on my team because they see the world through different eyes, and I completely value that perspective. So yeah, that's one of your unique things that you bring then to the network, the value. Yeah.
100%.
Very good points. Thank you so much. I think there was a question earlier, which I found really interesting, and it resonated in Dimple's presentation about being in a loud environment, but also what happens when you talk to someone that is only talk about themselves, or they're trying to take over the conversation, and you're feeling your input is not really taken into account? How can you take or refocus the conversation into something that is reciprocal?
I would move on.
Yeah, I mean,
No.
I was going to say, I'd politely
Forget
take
them.
myself to the loo. I'd politely take myself for a break. If I felt that somebody, or the other neat thing to do is to bring someone else into the conversation. So I would tend to move my body and try and go and try and move us towards somebody else, and that's really neat. And what you do you dilute that, and you bring someone else that might be on their own into your conversation.
Yeah, I find that a lot of, let's say, senior managers, kind of the C level as well, they tend to be used to talking a lot. And I find that sometimes you have, sometimes when you need information from them, sometimes it's okay to kind of let them go. But then I would be brave and, ask a question and ask, I don't mean to interrupt your train of thought, but I'm really curious about, and then move it to your topic. If it's, because sometimes you need to network because it's part of your job, right? I mean, we're kind of talking before more about networking for kind of like expanding our career possibilities, but I use networking to get my job done. So I don't always like the people that I need to network with. So we didn't really talk about that, but so, you don't have to be best friends with everyone. You don't have to like everyone. Be respectful, and at the same time, you don't need to waste your time on people that go on and on if it's not really bringing value to you, or it's purposeful. So remember your purpose. So why are you here? Maybe that's a good mantra to have. Like, why am I here? If you're here for a reason, you need an answer from this person, then stay there. If you don't, then move on.
Yeah. I mean, the other thing is, what do you need from me? I mean, I'm listening, and you're saying you've got some lovely things to say, but what exactly what would be useful for me right now? So
they don't have lovely things to say.
But you have to. It's just. I think you've become culturally closer to the Germans.
Maybe I'm too direct. Okay, I'll shut up now. I better be careful.
One thing to add to that, I think it's really interesting to not take things so personally. And it's happened, I guess, to me a couple of times in some networking events. And I think if you really want a quick out, a couple of things that I use is, I just need to pop to the loo, and I'm going to get another drink, and you sort of reset it a little bit, and then you sort of circulate the room differently and maybe avoid that person a little bit more. But essentially, don't take it personally. I think that's quite good
That's
advice.
Really good advice, Dimple. I like that.
Totally. I don't know, it might be a tricky question, but something that I've come across, and maybe some of you have, is if you're really bad with names and remembering people's jobs and the companies, how do you avoid making that awkward, kind of trying to look at the name badge or trying to remember? Do you have any advice on that? It's a tricky question. Yeah, and everyone.
For me, I think it's again happened to me a couple of times. I sort of tend to brush aside or not consider that it's awkward. I just go straight away. I forgot your name, so ask the question straight away. I think people are in the same boat as well, so they sort of understand. So that's what I tend to do sometimes, even if it ends up being awkward. Just go for it.
Yeah. I mean, I might skirt around it, to be fair. And look at them.
Or sometimes I'll wait for people to introduce themselves.
Oh yeah, that's a good point.
I kind of take a pause if someone new comes to the conversation. I'll just kind of wait. Or and normally naturally they'll introduce themselves.
It can be quite fun, how you get around the problem solving in a minute. See how agile you are.
Just call them darling or something. No. So neutral. I don't know.
I guess a follow-up to that question, do you think business cards are important when going to networking events? Is it outdated?
That's a good question. I use LinkedIn that's probably my business card nowadays. I do have business cards. I find that I have a pile of business cards. I don't always use them. Maybe if you're going to a career fair or something like that, I find that might be helpful because it might help trigger that conversation. And sometimes if I receive a business card, I'll write a note on the back. But I don't know, I don't tend to use them a lot anymore. I would just probably connect through LinkedIn. Yeah,
me too. I'd go straight onto LinkedIn and say, shall we link in?
Yeah, but at a career fair, it might be helpful.
It's good if you're in a group, you can turn the function on to connect with those near me. And so you can all...
that's good too. Yeah. True. There's a QR function. Yeah.
That is very true. Are there any other questions from everyone attending? Feel free to put it in the chat. Something that I
forgot to tell sorry,
yes.
I just wanted to mention, I forgot to tell a trick also about conferences. I go through this kind of quandary every year. How many conferences do I attend? What kind of trainings or workshops? And just a tip for you, also in the beginning of your career, if you can somehow speak at that event or conference or training, that brings a lot more value because people will then automatically come to you. So that's a little bit of a trick, maybe. I know you're starting out in your careers, but I still think it's valuable to think about because that also brings you, something you could post on LinkedIn. And so it's a little bit of visibility as well. So it's kind of the double win, visibility plus kind of people coming to you, and that you don't have to, make up your topic. So you have it already.
Yeah.
And that's something maybe you could practice here, as Dimple did today. She did an amazing job.
Absolutely. And something that came across in our conversation earlier, Kathryn, was what you said about opportunities that come through weak links.
True.
I thought that was really fascinating.
Yeah, so there was a study done in the 1970s, and it's still true today. Basically, they studied how promotions and job opportunities are how people come by them, and they studied people's networks. And it's funny enough, your close networks, so your inner circles, your close colleagues, your close friends, they don't bring you those opportunities. The opportunities come more from what they call weak links. So weak ties. And your weak ties are kind of people that you kind of know, but not very closely. So you may have encountered them. Maybe they're colleagues of colleagues, kind of in other departments, or people that you used to work with maybe years ago or studied with years ago, or maybe a neighbor, or the neighbor's sister or whatever. So these are people you don't typically have contacts, but you have some interaction, like you have some link to them, but they're weak links. So Tracy would be a weak link for me right now. And they have, the reason why is because they have broader networks, they have more networks, more access to people that you do now, because the close links you have, they have the same networks. So that's why.
Yeah. And the other thing is, quite often it'll be via. So I meet Kathryn at an event, and
that's
then
right.
I will recommend her. I won't need her service, but I'll recommend her to somebody else. Because
and those are unknown links.
Yeah. So that's why it is about relationships. It is, if you can, to keep going to the same events, build your relationships. And that's consistency. So if you're going to do networking, pick your events, pick your places you're going to go to network, and do it for like 6 months. Don't just pop in once and never go back there again. You will not build a network like that. Just keep going back. If it's a conference and held by the same organization, you just pick your moment, your places, and keep it consistent.
That's a very good advice, Tracy. I think if that's okay, we'll wrap up the question and answer session. Were we going to do a poll today?
We are going to do them. And Carolyn, yes, we're going to put some in-person events. We've got one in October, I think in 2 weeks actually, or next week. Next Thursday it might be, off the top of my head. It's next Thursday. So jump on, if you're a member of Wish, jump on to the website and book yourself in, because that's going to obviously be limited numbers. So yes, we're back live in the room next week. So I am going to launch a poll before Kimmy wraps up for us. So I'm just going to launch this poll. There we go. If you could just give us some feedback, that would be great. I will wait till the majority of you have answered. So the quicker your fingers, the better. Great. Nearly there. We've got 27 have answered. So everybody that's going to answer has answered. There's 3 questions there. Okay, lovely. I'll end the poll. Thank you very much. This is looking at, did you find this useful, the event? Which networking would you prefer? So I launched the poll, you can see that. That's good that people found it useful. And there's a mixture, you want online and live. So thank you for that. What I would like to do before Kimmy speaks is to have a photograph with everybody. So if you're happy to have your picture, please do switch your cameras on, and then I can take a photograph, because it's always lovely to see everybody's lovely face on the Wish call. So good, everybody on. So if you want to, I'll do a 3, 2, 1, and then I'm going to do a screenshot. 3, 2, 1, smile. Lovely, thank you.
I wish I'd washed my hair, Tracy. That wasn't part of the joining instructions.
There we go. So I'll hand over to Kimmy to wrap up.
So firstly, I'd like to say thank you to all of our lovely speakers for honestly and openly sharing with us some of their challenges and highs and lows in terms of networking. And hopefully everyone on the call who's still here has understood that, you know, no one loves networking in a conference sense, but, you know, it's one of those important life skills that we just have to get better at adjusting to. Secondly, I thought I'd just recap in terms of some of the headlines that you've heard today so that we can, you know, go off and practice these skills. But before I do that, I just wanted to really flag that, you know, networking, what we've heard today is not just about the conferences and the events and those things are part of it, but actually networking, as Tracy started off with, is about relationship building and making those actual genuine authentic connections with other people that we come across, not because we want to get something from them, but actually because we're interested in what they have to say and interested in what they do. So in terms of the keynotes that I wanted to make sure that we all got, it was that networking is all about relationship building. It's, in practical terms, it's great to have a backup plan when you're going to those events or you're trying to have a call with someone. You know, maybe draft that email before you go to the event and, you know, capture some of the things that you want to capture whilst you're at the event, or take a friend along with you so that it's not as daunting as Dimple mentioned. And it means that, you know, in case you change your mind, you can always come back and meet up with your friend and it's not so intimidating or scary. Listen to others and be curious to what they have to say. It's not just about you. None of us wants to be that person who people are trying to escape because we're the one who's talking for ages and not giving, not really listening. Obviously, it's none of us on this call. And say yes and be brave. You know, networking, as you've heard from lots of people on this call, is sometimes it pushes you outside of your comfort zone, but that uncomfortable feeling isn't always a bad thing. It just probably represents a bit of growth in your life and in your experiences, and that's a good thing, and that is to be embraced. And don't assume that because you might be the youngest person in the room or the newest person at the job, that you don't have anything interesting to say or value to add. That's not the case whatsoever. All of our perspectives are important, and we all bring something different and interesting. And finally, use your body as much as you can to show, to bring other people into the conversations that you're having at these events or wherever it is you might be networking in. If you spot somebody else who's by themselves, be that person to, invite them into your conversation, or, include them as well. So be that person. So yeah, hopefully I didn't speak too quickly. But thank you all so much for being lovely and for being here and for joining us and for sticking with us through this event. And we really hope you found it useful, and the poll seems to suggest that you did. So, do let us know if there are more events that you would like us to cover going forward as well. We're always open to hearing your views and your opinions.
That's fantastic. Thank you. Should we ask everyone to put one word into the chat of how they're feeling now about networking? Just one word, how you're feeling about networking. Brilliant. Fantastic. Oh, that's so lovely to see. Thank you so much. I really just wish you lots of luck with your networking. Take us with you when you're networking. Think about us and our warm smiley faces, and we'll be with you. So I'm going to hand over to Kathryn just to close, I think.
Thank you, everyone. It's been a fantastic event. I'll just reiterate what Kemi said. Thanks to the speakers, and thanks to all of you for coming to this event with an open heart and an open mind and getting involved. It's really appreciated. Please, if you do have any money, do donate to the Girls Network. That we did this to really raise awareness for them and to help young people, any people really understand the networking and why we do it. So I just want to say thanks to you all. Well done for spending the hour and a half with us. I know it's quite long on a Wednesday night. So I hope you all take the lessons learned and have fun with it. So
you can say goodbye to us. Let's all say goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks all.
Thank you. Bye.
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 Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.